Hello and welcome to Past Your Bedtime. My name's Bev. If a new housing development appeared on the fields just outside your town or village, what would be your immediate thought? Most probably you'd consider the impact on local services, schools, the doctor's surgery maybe, or perhaps the aesthetics of the design. You might have a feeling about how it changes the dynamic of the area, the view from your window, and even mutter the phrase, "I remember when all this was just fields." But you're possibly less likely to consider the effect it will have on the biodiversity of that patch of land and its surroundings. For the uninitiated, the Oxford English Dictionary definition of biodiversity is stated as the variety of plant and animal life in the world or in a particular habitat. In today's episode, I talked to Ben Taylor from the Iford Estate in East Sussex, a sprawling site set across and below the South Downs National Park. Ben has been taking the estate on a journey that, together with other forms of diversification, sees them selling BNG credits to developers, as well as creating new revenue streams from businesses looking to offset their biodiversity footprint. This area of land management and its relationship with the farming industry was a completely new subject to me, and worried that anyone with knowledge in this area would be some tub-thumping eco-warrior with an agenda, I'll admit I was very anxious. But Ben was no lentil-knitted tank-top wearer, and what I learned from our conversation reinforced my belief in the need to discuss a variety of solutions in support of nature recovery, as well as listening to those people facing the unique challenges of their own farm economy. Anyway, here we are with Ben giving me an overview of all things BNG. Ben, lovely to see you. Thanks so much for joining me. It would be really useful, I think, to start with an understanding for the audience, and myself included, what's meant by biodiversity net gain, BNG. Tell us a bit more about that.
BNG fundamentally is an outcome of the Environment Act of 2021, and it requires developers to quantify how much biodiversity is on their development site and then replace it either on-site or off-site with the same plus 10% to give you the net gain. And so what it's done is created a marketplace really for biodiversity and for nature, and bringing private money into nature recovery in a sense, because those developers very often choose to replace their biodiversity off-site. So there's a network of habitat banks now around the country. There's about 200 as we speak, of which we've got 2. And they're able to come to us and say, we need a unit of woodland, can you supply it? And they buy the unit, and we commit to manage it for biodiversity for 30 years.
I've read the 30 years bit. Is that hard and fast?
Well, I think it's a minimum. I've ever since we've been in the journey, I've always viewed it actually as a perpetuity commitment, because apart from anything else, even if we wanted to, I'm not actually convinced that you'd be able to destroy the biodiversity you've created in 30 years in any case. So I'm viewing it very much as a perpetuity commitment, and see what habitats develop the next 60, 70, whatever years.
And what I came across the term voluntary biodiversity credits. What's that about?
Well, that's it's something I'm trying to get off the ground a little bit. It sort of comes off the back of the whole BNG thing. But my idea is that there's a load of companies out there who are creating harm through their day-to-day activities to the environment and to biodiversity. And in the same way as they might go out and buy some carbon credits, they can buy a voluntary biodiversity credit, which has the same legal underpinnings as the statutory BNG market. But what it does do is fractionalize them. So I sell them a 3 meter by 3 meter what3 words square.
Right.
And so they get a certificate with the what3 words address on, or hopefully addresses. And in the same way that the BNG is for 30 years, that's guaranteed for 30 years. And they get a little badge to put on their website or in their brochures and publicity. And it's just addressing that whole ESG, environmental social governance need. And it's very early days, and trying to just explain to people, trying to refine the elevator pitch really to get people interested in it. But there's definitely there's definitely a market out there for it. And we're just spending quite a lot of time just trying to get people to think about if they might like to invest.
So if I wanted my own little 3 metre square patch of natural landscape, I could effectively do that and go visit.
Yeah, like literally, you can go on a website and click buy now and put your credit card details in, and then
reminds me of those Scottish heraldic titles that you can buy yourself. I think metre square of Scotland, and say that you are.
It's a bit more tangible than that.
So how did you come to be involved in this then? Let's go right back to the beginning. So your LinkedIn profile doesn't give too much away, and I do want to ask you about some of the articles, some of the content that you put on there. But in terms of background, I haven't got a clue.
Well, my background is that I grew up very locally. My parents' farm just up the road, 2 or 3 miles up the road, and I came to Iford first off as the harvest boy about 30 years ago, and then I did that for a couple of years, just as a sort of helping out around the place. And then I went off to Cirencester and did a farm management course. And I was very lucky that at the same time as I finished that course, the current foreman was retiring. So the job came up, I applied for it, and the rest is history. And I've been here ever since.
So literally man and boy.
Well, yeah, literally. Yeah, quite.
And you're just outside Lewes. Tell me a bit about the estate.
Yeah, well, it's a really lovely estate. It's wholly within the Southlands National Park. It's just outside Lewes, and so we surround Lewes to the south. And Lewes is an hour from London on the train. So there's lots of people coming into the national park via Lewes. Yeah. And the estate, it's a very traditional estate. The Robinsons who own it have been here since 1895. They're long-term stewards of it. And it's a very varied estate. We've got land right up on top of the South Downs, so there's really nice whale-backed hills rolling across the horizon. And then right down into the valley of the River Rouge. So we've got really varied soil types and a huge amount of baseline environmental stuff going on. We've got triple SIs around us and within us, and national nature reserves on the boundary, and a whole load of biodiversity and ecology going on. So it's a really interesting little place from that point of view as well.
Yeah. You said stewardship there. That just reminded me to ask you, when we talk about farmers being stewards of the land, I'm going to struggle to try and put my question together in terms of the various schemes that are available for rewarding certain behaviours around stewardship. But what is the difference between stewardship and the biodiversity and sustainability schemes that are out there to maintain the natural order?
Well, I suppose we've always been involved in countryside stewardship right from the very beginning, which is, I don't know, 1987 or something like that. It all started with ESA schemes, and we've been in it ever since in all its various guises, and it became higher level stewardship and countryside stewardship, all sorts of different acronyms for it all. But in essence, they're fairly short-term agreements, very generally quite broad brush, not always, and some of the higher level schemes are a bit more targeted, but they're short-term. They're never more than 5 years unless in exceptional circumstances, and so there's never the certainty, I suppose, contained within them to actually do that sort of long-term landscape change that actually is quite nice and also needs doing. Whereas BNG, on the other hand, is 30 years. You get all your money up front, so you can fund all the work that you need to do. And so I suppose the fundamental difference really is just in terms of length of agreement.
Yeah. And you say about the long-term aspect of it. So there's some sort of contention, I think, going on in my head around setting aside land for biodiversity. Does it equate to taking land out of production?
No, and this is, I think, probably one of the common misconceptions. We, on our biodiversity land, we're not producing food. We're just producing different sorts of food, and I suppose we've de-intensified And whereas it was a very intensive arable landscape on those areas, it's now a much more pastoral landscape. And it will be grazed, and so there's a livestock output rather than a arable output. So it's different, but it's not no food production. That's the end of it. It's just different.
Yeah. Where does rewilding come into this?
Well, I think
that's throwing terms at you left, right, and centre. Sorry.
I mean, if it's on a spectrum, that's the other end of it, because that's literally shut the gate and let nature get on with it. Whereas we're actually managing nature to create the biodiversity outcomes that we want to create, and we're not micromanaging it, but we know that we want to create woodland over there and scrub over there. Whereas a rewild would just say, we'll see what develops over time, and the woodland will be where the woodland is.
And is that the case then? You manage it to a point and then leave it, or it's a constant management process over the 30 years?
Well, I think it would be constant, because you are looking to create specific habitats in order to satisfy your legal agreements with the people that you've sold the habitats to. So we might be looking to create grassland habitats in some areas and scrub habitats in the others. And so we can't actually let the scrub encroach too much onto the grass, because there's no longer grass then. And the grass has to hit certain criteria. There have to be so many species of flowers per square meter, and all those different criteria that you've got to meet. So it needs managing to achieve those criteria.
Yeah. There's a degree of ignorance, and I'm displaying a lot of it right now, among the non-agricultural population. But what would you like to clarify about BNG? What would you like to explain so that people really get it? Because it is a really complex area, and we're reliant on sort of sound bites or people with a bias representing a group or a faction. Do you know what I mean? What would you like to get across to people to understand it?
Well, I think it's not perfect by any means, but what it's done for the first time ever, as far as I can tell, is allowed farmers, landowners to monetize the work that they probably, to a certain extent, been doing for a long time, but to quantify and monetize the creation of biodiversity and the recovery of nature from the private sector with an easily understood mechanism, a legal backing, and clarity on both sides about what people are doing. And so that in itself is a really exciting step in the journey to nature recovery that we need to undertake in this country.
What was it you wrote recently, 2 or 3 months ago? You sort of said, that's if that happens, this will be bad for BNG. That some change in policy coming up.
Yeah, I mean the problem is, I think that the whole BNG policy was introduced. Well, it came live 2 years ago, and it's been in the making for 5 or 6 years. And of course, we've got these big political pressures to build houses, the 3 million target, and I suspect, although I don't know, but I suspect that it's actually proved quite difficult to hit that 3 million target. So government are trying to get rid of any perceived barrier to building those houses. And BNG was touted by some as a barrier. I actually genuinely believe it's not a barrier. I can transact on a site in a morning, and it's not massively expensive when it's converted into pounds per house or pounds per hectare or whatever. So I don't perceive that it is a barrier, but there was a perception by some that it was a barrier, and so they've put a small site exemption in. So if your site's below a certain threshold, you no longer do BNG on it, which is a shame, because it's actually, from our point of view, about 90% of our transactions were within that threshold, but not 90% by value, but 90% by number. So it has wiped out
units, number of property units.
No, 90% of our actual sales of 90% of our customers were in that small site threshold, but because they were small sites buying small numbers of units, it's not as much as 90% in terms of revenue and unit sales. So it's a shame, because that was like the bread and butter that kept kind of trickling in, and then every so often you get a nice big one, and that's the cream on the cake.
So has that been enacted now, that change?
No, because now it's got to be, there's some sort of secondary legislation that's got to go through, and so it'll take a while to come in. But of course, it just creates uncertainty in the market. Developers not wanting to commit.
Word is a year, isn't it?
Yeah, and so it's such a shame, because it was and still could be a really successful policy that was actually being watched right around the world. I mean, I had the Indonesian ministers here, a delegation of Indonesian ministers, looking at how the BNG regime worked, so they could take elements of it back to Indonesia to compensate for all the loss of the rainforest for palm plantations and all that stuff. So, right around the world, people were looking at this really groundbreaking policy, and within 2 years of it starting, and it barely bedded in, and all of a sudden, they're suddenly just cutting big swaths of it out. Real shame.
Yeah, seems to be their MO about most things. It feels, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, if that happens, what's the future look like for you and others like you, do you think?
Well, like I said, it's kind of taking the bread and butter out of it, and it's not terminal by any means, but it's just that uncertainty, and just not letting the policy bed in, not allowing it to just run its course for a few years before you tinker with it. And don't get me wrong, there were adjustments that probably did need to be made, but that threshold wasn't one of them, in my view.
Yeah. So it was brought in by the Tory government.
The original policy was.
Yeah.
Its latest consultations.
It's now
finished. That's a Labour consultation.
Yeah. And so we've got that to play with as well, haven't we? Where they keep chopping and changing and saying, well, we'll bring that back when we get back into power, or we'll remove that when we get back into power. Yeah. Interesting. So outside of all of this heavy stuff, what's a typical day like for you, Ben?
Well, I mean, it's a really busy place now. We've got, as well as the BNG, we're farming about 1,200 hectares of farmland. We've got a whole heap of diversification projects running. So we've got a set of self-contained holiday lodges, a holiday lodge park, 12 units. We've got a livery yard, we've got an airstrip, we've got fishing lakes, we've got about 50 or 60 let commercial units. We've got a sauna, we've got some residential property that I look after as well. So, there's loads going on. And so I actually, there's no one pound to the day.
It's massive. Is it?
Yeah.
Not bad for the harvest boy. I bet you're not allowed to do that anymore, are you? Do you think I could get a summer job as a harvest girl?
Yeah, you can try.
I quite like the sound of that. But no, in all seriousness, it sounds like an incredibly busy enterprise to be managing. It's like a massive holiday resort almost, with the amount of diverse activities that go on the estate.
Yeah, but it's not uncommon actually these days that all rural businesses have had to diversify to keep the core business functioning.
Yeah,
and it's been we've been 25 years at it since we first let the first ever commercial unit, and we've gradually built it as the farming's contracted and changed in nature. Buildings have been freed up. We've invested in them. And then the whole new enterprise, like the holiday lodges, came about. So yeah, it's been a gradual process, but every estate that I can think of around here is doing the same thing.
And what do you want to do when you grow up?
Well, I think I've got a lifetime's work here. We've got plenty more buildings and plenty more ideas brewing away in the background to do.
Going back to the diversity issue, what can someone who wants to get involved in maybe the voluntary contributions towards it? How do you go about that?
Well, the VBCs, voluntary biodiversity. Yeah, well, literally just go on our website, ifordbiodiversityproject.co.uk, and you can follow the link and buy it. It's really simple.
And is there what's the charging for it?
Well, a what3 words square costs £200 plus VAT, and then so you get your certificate with the what3 words address on, and then then we've got various membership levels. So if you buy less than 10, we'll do like an open day once a year, and you can sort of be guided to your plots and have a look at what's going on. If you buy bigger quantities, you can have a private tour with a private group tour, or just a private tour for your whole team.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we're doing corporate away days as well. So it's sort of showing people what's going on with the biodiversity.
I like the sound of that, because I had this conversation with someone a little while ago about, given where I've come from and trying to get into agriculture and being that sort of numpty with daft questions or just absolutely no concept of a particular process or system in a farm, how useful it would be to be able to do that on farm visit, maybe have your corporate bit in the morning and then actually connect with the farm environment in the afternoon, because it feels like that's one of the missing links, really. If we're to have people appreciate where their food comes from, what the issues and the impacts around farming and food production today, and not just targeting that at kids, which is incredibly valuable. And it's people my age and who've lost touch with where their food comes from.
Yeah, no, you're right, and people are really interested and engaged when they come on site. And we've got a whole sort of program and stuff that they can do. So we can do a guided walk with an ecologist that actually just understand what they're looking at, or they can have a tour with me, and I can tell them about their whole BNG and how we're managing the place. Or we can do just simple stuff like tree climbing, or some scrub clearance, or some wildflower planting, whatever. There's a whole menu of options, and people really get involved with it. And then if they want, they can have a private space for their team meeting in the afternoon, nice lunch from a local caterer. So it's something we're trying to build, but there's definitely people out there who are just really keen to learn. Like you say, I think people feel a bit disconnected, and they just really welcome the opportunity to learn more about what they're seeing and eating, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, and it's quite an intimidating thing to. I know this from personal experience, just approaching a farmer, and it's a slightly different setup up here where I am to the estate that you work on, but to just have the balls to go and rock up at a farmhouse and, ask to speak to the farmer. Now, I know there's ways of doing that, but it's almost like a closed off society when, as a non-farmer, you see a farmstead and you think, well, should I go in through that gate? It looks like it's open to visitors, but really you just feel like you're stepping into another world, and it's a place you're not allowed into.
Yeah, well, and I suppose it's a sort of a historical thing, isn't it? We, as an industry, we've historically been quite insular and quite closed, I think.
Mm.
But I'm certainly I try very hard not to be, and to welcome people on. And we've opened up, a whole load of footpaths, a whole network of footpaths around the estate, and encouraging people on as much as we can. And if at the same time you can gain some profits and some trading off that, so things like our sauna or fishing lakes, or a corporate away day,
Yeah,
or a biodiversity credit, then it works both ways, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. Well, what does the rest of today hold in store now that the sun's come out?
It's finally trying to get on with some field work. So we're busy putting fertilizer on. We've got some spring drilling to do, hopefully towards the end of the week. The cows are just thinking about calving.
Yeah.
So that's all going on. Then we've got a couple of building projects on, converting a couple of units into more workshops.
It's all go.
It's all go.
Is the farm adopting a regenerative approach to agriculture, to the arable side?
Yeah, well, I definitely try and farm with regenerative principles in mind, and as much as it's possible to do it, but I'm not overly dogmatic or evangelistic about it, and I think that's part of the problem with regenerative agriculture, is that there's a group of very evangelistic people who sort of seem to dominate the debate. But those core principles of keeping green cover on the living roots, they say, in the soil at all times, that's a really good principle. And non-inversion tillage, also really good. Trying to get organic matter back into the soil as much as you can, mixing livestock into your arable rotation. They're really good things to do. But I'm not evangelistic about it. And so if I need to plough it, I'll plough it. And if we can't get a green cover established, it just doesn't happen, you know. So I try and flex it, but I do always have those principles in the back of my mind. You know, we've done quite a lot of soil testing this year, and our organic matter levels are really high. And you dig a hole and it's full of earthworms, and yields are reasonable. I think we probably beat the average for this part of the world. And so I kind of think I would like to think we've got the balance right.
Yeah. So you mentioned about getting on with fertilizing. Is it an all natural fertilizer, or does it break the principles of regen?
No, I think there is a recognition that you have to use ammonium nitrate from time to time. So no, we put a bit of organic manure on because we've got cows, so we generate some. And we have over the years put a lot of organic matter on, but no, this is bagged artificial fertilizer.
Yeah, you're right. It is a bit confusing for the layperson to understand even what the definition of regen is. It seems to be slightly different depending on who you talk to, which I suppose is all our sort of natural biases coming into play there. Rumour has it that this season's Clarkson's farm is all about him grappling with, I think it's regen that they're doing. No, they're doing drones. Forgive me.
Well, he's also doing the cereals event, the industry showcase event at Diddley Scott this year. So
yeah,
I imagine there'll be some chaos around that in the next series.
Yeah, there will be. You can't attend cereals if you're not actually in the industry, can you?
No, I don't think you can.
Whereas the Farm Fest thing sounds, I'm not sure. The thing at Stoneleigh Park sounds like there's going to be bouncy castles and
maybe,
portaloos.
But actually, as we were saying earlier, the more that you can get people engaged in,
I shouldn't turn my nose up at it.
Yeah, exactly, because it's getting people interested in agriculture and farming and the rural economy, and it doesn't matter what it is. Any level of interest is great.
Yeah. What do you think is missing then? Where have we lost our way a bit with either farming or food production? Since neither of us are old enough to remember the Second World War, so we can rule ourselves out of that discussion. But since the 70s, 80s, what has happened?
Well, I don't really know, but what I've observed, I suppose, is that our food has become industrialized, hasn't it? Not the production of the raw ingredients necessarily, but the manufacture of those raw ingredients into food products has become very industrialized. And in doing that, we've all lost sight of the ingredients that it came from.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we've lost sight of the people that produce those ingredients and tending to undervalue them, because once you can start making food in a bathtub, then people naturally lose touch with the people that are growing in the first place. And that's not the whole reason. We've become an urban country, and people move to the cities, but I don't know, since the Industrial Revolution, haven't they? And every time they just lose touch with the country side.
Yeah. It just feels like in my lifetime, it's just a world away from my memories as a child. There weren't any farmers per se in my family tree, but there were people who worked on farms as casual labourers. And just when I think of, visiting my granddad and my great uncle when I was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, just their existence, their habits, their sheds, and their gardens, it just seemed they were much more in touch with the land and the principles of growing things. And
yeah, but don't you think that every generation looks back on their childhood with that sort of rose tinted spectacles? And
you think, I don't know, it wasn't rose tinted in my house, but it was down at my my great uncle's place. I loved it there, absolutely.
It was the 70s as well, so it was pretty grim in all other respects. The 3-day week and the winter of
Yeah.
discontent. What's on the cards for the estate? What are the plans for the estate in the coming years?
Well, I really hope that we can continue with this whole biodiversity journey. We've got 800 hectares of B&G to enact to finish the whole biodiversity project off. And there's some really big projects in the months. We've got about 300 hectares on the Lewis Brooks, which we used to farm. And when I came here in 2000, we've grown some really big crops of wheat and rape down there, but it's become increasingly wet. And we first of all put it into stewardship, I don't know, 2007 or 8 or something. And so it's all grassed down and it's continued to get wetter and wetter. And now actually today it's under a foot or two of water in most places. So I've got a really nice B&G project there to actually keep that water there through the summer, get the nesting birds to stay so we can have lapwing, greenshank, redshank, all those things breeding down there. And it'll make really nice BBC projects as well, actually. So I'd really like to get that underway. That'd be amazing. Roll the B&G out more widely across the rest of the estate. And just and it's all really just about trying to secure the future of the estate for the next 130 years.
Yeah. But I said this to somebody else, the time is now, right? I think the public engagement in the subject of, the countryside, the plight of farmers, food production, and I think there's a revival, groundswell, for example, as an event, I don't know how many years it's been going, 5, 6, a bit longer.
Yeah, a bit more, yeah.
But last couple of years, just explodes.
Yeah, but it's more than that, because I think people are really conscious of the environment and the biodiversity crisis and all that sort of thing. And so people really want to find a solution that works for that. And when you present people with a solution, they're really engaged with it. So if you can combine that interest in farming and food and biodiversity, then there's a real win there for everybody, I think.
And it's collaborative with the farmers as much as anything.
Yeah, and as I said before, just getting private money into nature recovery is a massive step forwards for nature recovery, because you're no longer reliant on the public purse and all the vagaries of that. And you can develop a market and it can be traded, and that's the way to get this stuff done, and not rely on public money for it.
Do you speak at any events that are coming up?
I do from time to time. If I get asked, I sometimes do it.
Don't look at me. I'm not very well connected at all.
No.
But it feels like there should be a public discourse about it, or just public awareness campaign or something.
Yeah, it's a really important message to spread. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the one to do it, but people, as we said right the way through, people want to understand it, and they in some ways they need to understand it, and to appreciate that there are things that can be done, really practical, tangible things that can be done to actually start to reverse that decline in biodiversity. And the critics will say about food production, as you mentioned earlier on, but I don't think anybody's saying it should be right away across the country. Every acre of land should be doing this. But if you can create those reservoirs where biodiversity can recover and start to spread out into the wider landscape, then that's actually really good. And if you can follow those law principles of bigger and better and more joined up, and start to create corridors of biodiversity, there's some really big wins to be had there.
Yeah.
But it's like no news. There's no such thing as bad press, is there? And the more those sort of topics enter the conversation, the more people are thinking about it and considering how they go about their day-to-day lives, thinking about biodiversity, thinking about the environment, thinking about food production. And so actually, in the round, it can only be a good thing the more people talk about it.
Yeah. It's really stretched my brain. Apart from anything else, it's nearly 3 o'clock, and 3 o'clock is my brain shutdown time. But But I have really enjoyed talking to you, Ben, and I'd love to talk to you again sometime. But it's a really hard topic for somebody who's not immersed in it to sort of understand the moving parts. The phrases, around nature recovery and biodiversity, and it just starts to become a bit of a word soup if you're not immersed in it.
Yeah,
You know what I
and
mean?
a soup of acronyms as well.
Yeah, there's that to contend with as well. But that's not. I pushed myself into doing this because it was not a reason for me to have an excuse to not talk to somebody like yourself. So I really appreciate you saying yes. And I think that's the struggle for most people, that it's sounds like a bit of a luxury.
But there's a way that everybody can help for 200 quid.
Yeah.
So it's an affordable route in, I suppose.
Stop it. Might not be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's that as well, isn't it? The affordability. But I think what's helpful is to sort of see it in action, understand it, and the more, going back to one of your points, the more people come on farm and or spend the day in your company and they get to see it in reality, then it actually means something, feels important, because it is important. It is.
Well, it's probably the most important thing of all, actually, because there's the biodiversity collapse that people are talking about. That affects every food system potentially that we've got, and then when you combine it with the climate change crisis and all those things, it's actually of vital importance. And the more people can kind of understand what's going on and how they might be able to help address it, and even only in a small way, it just creates a bit of momentum, doesn't it? And gets people thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that it's that point, and the point, my point being that the terminology has become hijacked, if you like, by the politics, and they're sort of loaded words. I can't remember who I was listening to, but that I think DEFRA's too big a department. It certainly hasn't got any clout, it appears, but it's also too wide to do. It's like jack of all trades, master of none. It just feels like it's this sort of department that talks a bit about farming and the environment and doesn't do either of them terribly satisfying.
Well, no, it doesn't. And but actually, what I should say, DEFRA's defence, and you won't catch me defending them very often, but their implementation of BNG was really, really good, and they, from the outset, created a system that worked completely seamlessly and has enabled the whole industry to become an industry.
Yeah, I think I read that in your article. Yeah,
they've done that really well. So I hold my hat up to them in that regard. Not in many other regards, but
well, it's not bad, is it? 1 in 10, 1 in 50 for the chance to get it right.
Yeah, and the thing about the inheritance tax, going back to that, was it seemed to me just crazy to tax the assets of a business, because it became the family farm tax, didn't it? But it wasn't. It's any small business, privately owned small business, is now having to sell business assets to pay the tax bill, and in doing so, probably become unviable. It's just bonkers. And all small businesses are in the same boat. Seems crazy.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I will knit together our various threads. Wish me luck.
Good luck. What are we today? The 3rd of March is. It really feels like spring today. The birds are really active. The flowers are just beginning to emerge. You see the odd bud on the tree. Yeah, it's really nice when everything finally wakes up, isn't it?
Yeah, lifts the soul. Well, you best get busy then. It's a good busy after the weeks and weeks of rain. But it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for sparing the time, and I'll speak to you again soon, I hope.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Ben.
I'm so grateful to Ben for his good humour and patience in answering my numerous questions. He's right when he says it's all about balance, and that the most important thing is to keep up the dialogue so that people learn about and appreciate what it means to create, restore and safeguard thriving areas of natural habitat for future generations, but doing so in a way that's not completely reliant on the volatility of government-funded schemes. If you want to find out more about the work that Ben and the team at the Iford Estate do, visit their website at ifordestate.com. I'll put some details in the show notes. As always, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please like or share or leave a review. It really helps others to find the show, and it lets me know that you're out there. Coming up next time, I'll be speaking to an IT professional who's launching a farming and food festival in the land of the midnight sun. Yep, that's Norway to you and me. Subscribe now so as not to miss the conversation. But for now, thanks for listening, and if it is past your bedtime, well, perhaps it's time to turn in. Until next time.